My question is as you look through your pragmatic eyes, is nuclear energy more nuclear energy, more of a matter of if, how, or when? If you had to pick one of those three words.
When. I would pick when. And that's because it's the ultimate answer. Again, when we're done trying all the poor solutions, we'll end up on the correct one, which is sort of a jumbling of Winston Churchill quote, I believe.
Right, about Americans. Yeah. So
yeah.
we'll follow it again.
We're seeing momentum around the world, especially in Japan. A little bit tougher in the US because of government regulators and their stubbornness. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC, is a real stumbling block for the industry here in the US. But by and large, that which must happen eventually will. And if we are serious about decarbonizing our economy, and there are many people in the world who are, then there is no better answer than nuclear power. And when we're done messing around with all of the dumb ideas, it must be, since we are relatively smart people, that we'll end up on the smart one.
Okay, and I want to make sure too that you're not predicating this on some breakthrough where all of a sudden we get to switch over to fusion. This answer still remains with fission, correct?
Oh, fusion is nothing more than the ideal distraction and stall tactic on the part of the environmentalists. There are no, and I mean underscore, bold, italic, no technical or financial barriers to solving the carbon crisis today. It is 100% political and propaganda. Nuclear power, if we truly embraced it, could radically decarbonize our grid, could radically displace an enormous amount of the fossil fuels that we burn today to generate heat. We would still need a fair amount of fossil fuels. And by the way, this is why historically the oil and gas sector has quietly and in some ways underhandedly opposed nuclear power. Much of the opposition in the US to nuclear power historically has been funded by the fossil fuel industry because they know what a threat it is to their livelihood. Mm-hmm. There are no technical or financial barriers to solving the world's carbon crisis if you assume that the amount of carbon we're producing is in fact creating a crisis. So the fundamental equation is standard of living divided by carbon emissions. If that is the equation you want to optimize, that you want to make as high as possible, there are no paths that don't involve nuclear power, and fusion is unnecessary given the state of the fission technology that already exists today, that is developed, that is modular, that can be replicated. The cost of nuclear power is an artifact of unnecessary regulatory red tape, which has been created by the environmental movement, in particular with the quiet assistance and perhaps cheering on of the fossil fuel industry, to make the population unnecessarily afraid of nuclear waste or a nuclear meltdown, which are events that we know how to prevent and or handle. There are no solutions, only trade-offs. And in the pantheon of energy choices available to us today, there is no better solution with fewer trade-offs than nuclear energy.
Where are we in terms of A, being able to store it safely, but B, is there potential either with existing or, kind of on the whiteboard technologies where we may be able to convert the worst of the radioactive waste and make it less dangerous for hundreds or thousands of years?
There is no waste issue. This is the greatest of the canards of propaganda. Truly, there is no waste issue. In the entire history of humankind, there is not a single individual that has ever been injured by nuclear waste. Not one. It's so absurd that we have allowed, and the industry has played the game. So here's the biggest mistake the industry ever did, was participating in this concept of we need to be 35 nines secure on our nuclear waste. What do I mean by that? 99 point, add 33 more nines.
Right.
It's so crazy that it's not even worth debating. We could take this stuff, which would fill a basketball court, I think, 20 meters high, shove it underground 300 meters, and then stand around for eons waiting for somebody to be hurt by it. And nobody would be. When you
Okay,
weight
and
that,
sorry to interrupt, but I want to make sure people take away from that. So
yes,
all of the nuclear waste that's been generated in the US and the world fits onto a basketball court 20, 30 meters high?
something like that. I think the US is 10 meters and the world might be 30. It's a shockingly small amount of material. Now, when you encase it in cement and you give it, 5 different layers of impregnable material so that it could never, ever escape from these vaults that we put it in, the volume, of course, will grow. But the waste itself is puny, and we could shoot it underground. We could just literally stick it underground. We bombed Japan twice with nuclear weapons. The amount of nuclear waste that would have to escape to replicate that. I mean, just people talk about nuclear waste like it is existential to the planet. And we not only bombed Japan, we did nuclear arms testing for decades. Last I checked, the planet is still here. We're talking today, right? Like the danger of nuclear waste has been so vastly exaggerated that there aren't words to describe it. It's totally absurd.
After recording Rick's presentation, in which he shares over 30 stocks from his personal watch list that he particularly favors right now, I asked him to share a stock for new investors considering investing in the nuclear energy space. Here's what he said.
You know, Adam, we didn't talk about what may be my favorite sector in energy, which is to say uranium. And the 800-pound gorilla in the uranium space is Cameco. Doesn't mean it can't trade lower before it trades higher. The stock is off a fair bit because they bought, in conjunction with a private equity firm, they bought Westinghouse, the big engineering firm. But what they've done is created a cradle-to-grave uranium company, all the way from mining the uranium through building nuclear power plants to recycling and storing waste. If I'm right about the ascent of humankind and about the demand for electricity, particularly carbon-free baseload electricity, Cameco belongs in everyone's portfolio.